Again, thank you for being here today. We would like to start by thanking the Navy Child and Youth Programs for making today's webinar on Military Academy Essentials for High School Students possible. Today's webinar is going to be a presentation followed by a question and answer session with our subject matter expert, Mr. Mark Patton. If his name sounds familiar, Mark is one of our MSEC military student consultants. Thank you for taking that poll. We do see that we have professionals joining us today, and we thank you for being here. We always welcome our professionals who join us that work with our military-connected children to our parent trainings, and we do think you'll find the information and the tips that Mark will share useful. But just understand that our MSEC parent support webinars have been designed with parents as the target audience. Welcome from Staten Island. So before I introduce our expert, I want to share a little bit more about MSEC and its mission. The Military Child Education Coalition, or MSEC, is a nonprofit organization that was established over 25 years ago with the mission to support all military-connected children by educating, advocating, and collaborating to resolve some of those education challenges that are associated with the military lifestyle. In 2005, MSEC formalized support and programming for our military-connected parents so that they may be empowered, informed, and proactive in supporting their children's educational journey. So we strive to deliver these informative and hopefully interactive webinars that address academic, social, and emotional issues that are associated with our sometimes chaotic military family lifestyle. Our vision, MSEC's vision, is for every military-connected child to be college, work, and life ready. A couple quick administrative announcements before we continue. Welcome from China Lake. At the end of the webinar, we would like to invite you to take our survey about today's presentation. We really would appreciate it if you would take the 2 or 3 minutes that it will require for you to give us your feedback. This is a key method that we use to let our funders know what we're doing, and it also lets us know where we may need to make adjustments so that we can continue to offer the very best training opportunities for you, our military-connected parents that we serve. You'll see a chat box on your screen. Of course, y'all are in there. Thank you. So feel free to ask questions in there for our expert today. My name is Michelle Bashir. I'll be facilitating today's webinar. I'm joined by my colleague, Kim Armstrong, who's in the chat box. Kim and I will be gathering your questions as they come in, so feel free to throw them in the chat box as they come to you, and we'll share them with Mark after his presentation. So please note that we encourage parents to interact with each other and share resources during our parent webinars, but we do not permit advertising for paid services. So in that chat box, you should notice a resource that contains information about military academies and some considerations when applying to them. So resources from today's webinar. Please know if you're joining us on your phone, you will not be able to download those resources, but if you private message us, your email, we'll see that you received that later today. This webinar is being recorded, so please know that you can always view the recording later if you want to review the material, or maybe you'll experience some technical difficulties, or perhaps you'll want to share the information with others to include your student. Just want to give you a warning, today's webinar is content heavy, and we may run over the hour today. So at this time, delighted to just tell you a little bit about Mark, our subject matter expert for today. Mark is a retired Air Force officer, father of 2, and a proud grandfather. He grew up as a military kid himself, living overseas in Germany and graduating high school in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Families find it very easy to talk to us, as I do. He's very easygoing, down to earth, and endears him to many people. So after spending nearly 40 years serving military members, Mark understands all too well the stressors that our military-connected students and families face, and he looks forward to the opportunities where he can be part of that solution and puts people at ease to help make their lives better, their military lives better. Before serving with MSEC, Mark was an associate professor and counselor at the Air Force Academy and served as a high school counselor with Air Force ROTC. He holds a master's in education and human relations with a specialization in organizational behavior and counseling at the Air Force Academy. Throughout his career, he commanded and served in locations around the world, including the Republic of Korea, Loring Air Force Base, Maine, and Ellsworth, South Dakota. He's a senior navigator and has logged more than 2,000 hours as a B-52 Stratofortress, and if I say these wrong, Mark, you'll correct me, B-1 Lancer, and T-43 as a navigator and combat systems operator. And Mark enjoys being part of MSIC and says that the best part of being a military student consultant is helping all of our military connected families and creating a better understanding of exactly who is considered military connected for our schools and our community. He works to create a larger network of organizations seeking to support military families across a wide range of issues, especially supporting our military connected students in schools and including stakeholders at all levels of the community. So I am going to go quickly, give you just a little brief and then throw it over to Mark. We have a big topic today. Let's see. Let's go to the learning objective. Thank you. So Mark is going to present an overview of the ROTC scholarships and admission options. He will highlight the admissions to the U.S. military academies, the Navy, Naval, Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marines, and share tips and best practices that we gathered from parents and students. Probably the most helpful of all of the sections today. We do have a big topic today, military academies, and we're also going to talk a little bit about those ROTC scholarships on the next slide. We're going to address general admissions for college-bound students who are interested in either going to the U.S. military academy or maybe looking to earn an ROTC scholarship for college. So before we continue, we have one more quick poll for you. Is your student interested in the military academies? Are they considering ROTC, or are they looking at both? Or maybe you're not sure yet. I'm just going to take a second and look at your answers. I think that's a very good decision to consider both. And yet unsure, hopefully we can help answer those questions for you today. Thank you for taking that poll. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mark. We're so glad you're here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll impart, well, number one, you need to change Lancer to the Bone. A B-1 is known as the Bone. No formal name Lancer. I would be buying at the bar if I was somewhere and said that.
Okay, I apologize.
And there's a whole, that's fine. There's a whole story behind the B-1 and it being called the Bone, but I digress. So one of the things I'd like to impart is that these are ever changing. ROTC scholarships, the processes, procedures, services have different. Over the last 5 years, there's been changes. Even when it comes to the academies, they have different changes. Later, I'll also talk about social media, but I will just start with take social media with a grain of salt. Every parent, every student has a different perspective of what their adventure has been. Therefore, listen to it, take it into account, and then make that work for you in terms of information. So let's start with ROTC. Like the slide shows, we have Army, Navy. Navy governs the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps option. Air Force does the same for Space Force. And the way that works is the cadet is selected or has the option to address Space Force once they're on campus. And then the Coast Guard has a unique program. I'll talk a little bit about that. We can go ahead and change slides. All right, some of the benefits. Yes, you serve your country. What the ROTC is intended to do is give us a basis of educated officers within certain fields that keep our services and our branches in a current military status, meeting the needs around the world. So while it cuts their costs, it's fed into a greater picture of where does that student. So for instance, when I was in ROTC, I was slotted in 1976, actually fall of 75, to be a navigator in the Air Force in 4 years, actually in 6 years, because I had 2 years of training. So it allows you also to pursue goals. You'll find a lot of doctors who started their time in service because it pays for medical school. And then it gives you the chance to earn a commission. Most ROTC, when you come out, you get a reserve commission until you finish training, and you have a chance to become a regular officer, and that has some certain guarantees that go with it. When you start the process with ROTC, you obviously are going to involve the universities that you're interested in, doing some tours. Each school is a little different. So for Texas A&M is known as the Corps of Cadets. It is a major part of what that university ethos is. Other universities like UNC Chapel Hill, they have a program on campus, but they also have schools around them that don't have their own ROTC, and those kids come today. You'll see in the chat box a link that talks about all the programs for today and how each of them are different. Bottom line is, because scholarship is going to cover the cost of tuition for up to 4 years. It's going to pay fees. Typically, you're paying your own room and board unless you get a certain type scholarship that will guarantee you paying everything. Generally, that's your pilot slots, your medical corps, etc. And if I say too much about Air Force, I'm sorry, that's my background, but I have been involved with the Army and the Navy in terms of scholarship selection committees. But they all allow you to buy to get into the branches. Next slide. Qualifying. Each branch has different, and this is within the last 3 or 4 years, different criteria that they've set. There's basic age requirements, there's basic academic requirements. Medical standards across the board are all decided by the Defense Medical Evaluation Board, DOBMERB, and what they say goes. They do issue some waivers, but as much as, there's a good example, used to, if you had a tattoo, you were ineligible. Then it came up, we'll give you a waiver. Then as they became more active in our environment and in our culture, they still require a waiver. And that is now not because of the medical side, but because of what that tattoo might represent. DOBMERB has the final say on that. And then each scholarship has a fitness test that you take. All the branches, it's push-ups, sit-ups, and a mile or a mile and a half run. When it comes to academics, there's GPA minimums for each. There's SAT and ACT minimums, and they're different. For instance, now the Army just requires that you take the ACT or the SAT. They don't have a minimum posted anymore. Air Force, on the other hand, stands by their score of 26 on the ACT as a minimum. Next slide. Just quickly talk about the sequence of scholarships. You're going to apply for the scholarship. Typically, your student's going to get a notice back of acceptance, and it's going to list at least 1 or 2 of the schools they listed and maybe some others. That doesn't mean you can't go to another school. You just have to apply. As part of that process, you're going to do an interview. Once you've reached a certain point in the application, you're going to do an on-site interview at a local university that has ROTC for that particular branch. Once that interview is done, you'll meet a board that convenes, like the Air Force Board convenes in Montgomery, Alabama. At Maxwell Air Force Base, the Army has a couple different places that they do theirs. You met a board and you could either be eliminated, you could be selected, you could be eliminated, or you could be continued so that you're compared. So in the Army, I had cadets when I was teaching junior ROTC who would meet 4 or 5 boards throughout the year because they might join a board, be on a board that group's just a little bit higher than them, and they get passed on. And they end up getting picked up by the end. The Army also has a cleanup board at the end of the year. You'll get a notification. Like I said, sometimes you'll get that notification, and it might have a school you had no idea of going, or one that you wanted to go to. I had a student I worked with whose mom and dad were volunteers from the get-go. Everything they owned was orange. He wanted to go to Tennessee, something fierce. And of course, rather than Tennessee, he was selected to go to the University of Florida for a ROTC scholarship. He worked with him. He applied to University of Tennessee. They contacted Cadet Command, and he is now a proud first lieutenant, University of Tennessee graduate in ROTC. In fact, university popped up some extra money for him, and that can happen. And then once you get your notification, they'll assign you your full medical and full physical through DobMERB and then whatever's the local medical facility near you for a physical. And it's a pretty extensive physical. And we can go to the next slide, talk quickly about the Coast Guard. Coast Guard does not have ROTC per se. They have what they call their pre-commissioning program, and it is for juniors and seniors. So you actually enlist and you become a trainee of sorts through your first 2 years. You have some pay, you have some benefits, and then once you're selected after the first 2 years, you then are in as a junior and senior, and you're going to enter the Coast Guard as an officer. And then a final slide on ROTC, just some good things to know. Get familiar with all the options. Like I said, just in the last year, there's been 3 major changes between the Army and what the Navy does. So I could post a lot of things up here. I check every year. I've now been doing it for 30 plus years. Every year I check. The only thing that hasn't changed is the Navy ROTC scholarship opens in the April 1st of your student's junior year. Typically 1 June, you'll see the Army and the Air Force open up. Last year, one opened 1 June, one opened 1 July. Not sure why. So I tell everyone in the spring, check, see what's the current, and there's going to be some pages listed later on that will give you each branch's the dog ear that page or tab that page and save it. You'll be able to pull up the current and what they're looking at. You can go ahead, if you've got a university that you're interested in, you can contact the ROTC officer and do an informal interview and let them know. The reason I tell kids to do that is the services still have that commanding instructor, that senior instructor has 2 scholarships per year that they can give directly based on an interview, and they are type 1 and full rides. The Air Force still has a program that a lot of kids will drop out of their freshman semester, and the instructor will then own that scholarship, and they can go to, and I've had a student sitting in class where one of the colonels walked in and awarded them a 4-year scholarship and back paid them for the previous semester. So there's a lot of options in there. So as soon as you know there's a school you're interested in, let them know, get to know that campus, get to know the program, and then do some kind of an interview, informal interview. Once the portal opens, go ahead and get as much done as you can. On the application, there's a lot of things that you have to fill out. Your guidance counselor has to be actively involved. They actually have a separate form. Get familiar with the application form. It's going to have some letters of recommendation to go with it. You're going to want to make sure you talk to those folks early. So if you can get ahead before the fall of your senior year, you're just getting that much further ahead and making your senior year a little bit easier. So you don't get a scholarship. You can take ROTC as a regular class in college. And I've been fortunate. I had a young man who did not get a scholarship. He was upset that he didn't get a scholarship. He was one of my commanders. We were all kind of surprised. He still chose at East Carolina University to take ROTC. And in the process of taking, got really good grades. And he was taking Air Force ROTC. And the Navy came in and said, we'd like to offer you a scholarship. And he ended up graduating from Navy ROTC and flying F-14. So, and I guess if I don't leave you with anything today, it's every pathway, ROTC, Academy, every pathway is different. And if that is that student's drive to attend or graduate, then they're going to find a way to do it. And then lastly, I always say, keep up with your academics and your grades. All right, let's transition over. If there's no questions and I'm not seeing any, let's, I guess it would help if I arrow down here. Yeah, there you go, yeah. We'll transition over to the academies, and that'll be the lion's share until we get to the end. I can answer questions then too. So like Michelle said, I spent 6 years at the Air Force Academy as an associate professor and counselor. Got heavily involved on the academic and academic programming side, the selection side. And then when I started teaching junior ROTC after I retired, was an academy liaison and stayed with that process. Right up until I retired in 95, and now I do it just out of interest in my job. So U.S. Naval Academies in Annapolis focuses on Navy. You can graduate from the Naval Academy and go into the Marines. I tried to find a current stat on that. It used to be about 12% of kids would graduate. Any Academy graduate at graduation can change service. I know that, in fact, because I had an Air Force Academy cadet in my squadron who showed up at graduation in Marine whites for graduation. And me and the air officer commanding both were like, what happened here? Turns out he and girlfriend had a fight. He wasn't going to follow her into the Air Force, so he joined the Marines. Not a recommended pathway necessarily, but it worked for him. I saw him 6 years later in Korea, and he was flying EA-6Bs and enjoying life. West Point is our oldest academy. It's the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. It's your Army entrance. And all the academies are going to give you a full ride. You're going to go there. Everything's going to be paid for. In fact, you're going to get your boots, some PT clothes, and other things before you ever show up, so you can start breaking your boots in before you show up for your freshman year, no matter what the name is. Realize at Naval Academy, you're a plebe, you're a dually at the Air Force Academy. Everybody's got a different name. A lot of folks don't know that we have a Coast Guard Academy. They are older than the Air Force Academy. It's our newest one. And they do the multi-mission of the Coast Guard. A lot of folks don't know exactly how many missions the Coast Guard has, but they have 5 separate missions now that they're under Homeland Security. And then lastly, our U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. Those are the officers that manage our civilian fleet that provides supplies to the military. So you're going to graduate, you're going to get commissioned just like everybody else. You're going to have the same pay scale from the Merchant Marine Academy. Basically pays your tuition. It's going to be everything. You're not going to get a vote about where you live. They're going to tell you where to live. The academies are known for academic programs. It's interesting that we highlighted humanities and sciences. I would say all the academies are, this day and age, are more heavily rotated toward our sciences. One of my very first cadets at the Air Force Academy was actually 22 when she got there, because 22. She was a junior at Florida State, but she always had a dream to go to the academy. She transferred in and ended up helping with the space shuttle program, and actually had experiments go up on some of the early space shuttle programs before she graduated. Super, but she had come in with a lot of science programs already. Rigorous is kind of the easy word to say about leadership and fitness. All of the academies have a rigorous physical fitness program. That's going to involve weights, lifting, all of the fun things that go into fitness and being able to complete a military career, no matter what the career is. Leadership, you actually have a period of nothing but military studies, which involve a heavy concentration in leadership. And most of the academies at this point, I'm not sure about Merchant Marine, has a leadership component through a leadership office at each of the academies. The one I personally worked with was at the Air Force Academy. We created an entire curriculum on leadership. We can go to the next slide. Qualifications. All we can say is excellence in academics. There is an average of 13,000 students applying for academies. Each academy has about 1,300 slots. So academics go a long way in what we look at. Now, is that student's always the best? No, it's still, they are universities. They have athletic teams. They're going to bring in athletes. I worked with an athlete. She was brought in with a math waiver. Don't recommend a math waiver at any university because you're going to take a lot of classes that require math and high levels of math, even if you're majoring in psychology, because you will all graduate with a Bachelor of Science from those academies. Extracurricular and athletics. We used to say school level, but now we have so many outside of school opportunities for athletics. They take all of that into account. Extracurricular takes on all of your social learning opportunities, giving back to the community, community service. Those are the things going to the extracurricular. One of the things, and there's questions on the application, is about leadership and involvement. At what level were you involved in the program? The example I'll use is Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Did you earn Eagle Scout? Did you get your gold award? And be able to write about the details that you did with the in doing those events. And there are certainly other leadership opportunities. Those are the two national ones that are easy to highlight. Excuse me. Then lastly, that congressional letter of recommendation. Probably the most difficult because every congressional leader is different in the way they go about. We had an election year, so there'll be some new folks in. One of the things each of the academies does do is within each of our congressional offices is they maintain the standards and work with even the new person coming in, so there's not a lapse. So, for instance, if someone's going out and you had that nomination is going to stay with you. The new person comes in, they're going to review those, and there would have to be a really good case where they go, I'm going to rescind that nomination. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But the bottom line is qualifications for acceptance extremely high. You're talking 75th percentile or higher on the ACT, so you're talking 30, 33, SAT 1380 or higher. You're probably going to find the median is more like 1320, but again, that's a wide range. And if I will say that all the academies, they're going to seek to find out what's the best person. They do go out of their way to find, do we have someone who has the academics? Do we have someone who has the physical? Do they have the leadership? What things have they done? All right, let's talk about each individual academy. We can go to the next slide real quick. West Point, just like it says there, it's our oldest. Build, educate, and train Corps cadets in service to the Army and the nation. And that is what you do. Realize that each service has pretty much the same career fields, just applied differently. For instance, Air Force, you think flying. Well, guess what? The Army has airplanes. The Navy has airplanes. The Marine Corps has airplanes. The Coast Guards have airplanes. So it's not to say that you're limited to each of those. West Point has about 35 different degrees. They've started doing an awful lot of stuff with smart physical fitness. I actually have several friends in MSEC, one of our MSEC researchers, Dr. Matthews, and I go all the way back to the Air Force Academy and taught in the same department. And I see from Stacy, please, if you got things to share either during the presentation or afterwards, that's fine. I'm current as of last fall. So any changes since then, I appreciate on any of the academies. Next slide, talk Naval Academy. Again, now I will say this, when you think about the Naval Academy, obviously you're thinking Navy and the ships and sea, but again, we have airplanes, and actually the Army owns more boats than the Navy does. I learned that in a special unique tour in DC with my ROTC cadets one year. Got them kind of excited because they got to load airplanes, which is, I was just confused the whole time, but the kids were understanding and loving it. But the Navy has about 20 majors. You'll graduate. You do have the Marine Corps option. You declare that at the end of your freshman year. I think it's freshman year still. They get about 13,000 applications a year, so they have a lot of folks that apply to the Navy. You will, just like all the academies, graduate with a Bachelor of Science. The last I looked, their acceptance rates, I think West Point's was around 10%. All of them are generally around that. Navy advertised 8 the last I looked. But again, at the end, we're going to give you some resources. And like I said at the beginning, always contact somebody. We've already got somebody now we can contact, Stacy, who chimed in. Find out what's the current info. Those of us on the outside can do the research to find it out. But in my job as a military student consultant, I'll tell you some things, but I'm going to give you a resource to go to get the current information. And then I become that one to bounce information off of. So appreciate that, Stacy. We go into the Air Force Academy. Next slide, yeah. Educate, train, inspire men and women to become officers, character, motivated. That's the standard. Their values-based statement, integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. That is the standard Air Force. Again, since we're talking Air Force, our primary mission is to fly and fight, prosecute through the air. We are now the umbrella for the Space Force. In fact, I just learned recently that 2 former Air Force bases are now Space Force bases out in Colorado, which is interesting. But again, you'll graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree, about 27 majors. The one thing I learned while I was there, even our psychology majors, I was in the Department of Behavioral Sciences and Leadership. Our majors that had all the science classes graduated with a Bachelor of Science because they were going to still take basic academy courses like engineering, like thermodynamics, like geology, and that might not be everybody's bailiwick to in terms of courses to study. Again, a Bachelor of Science, like everybody else, you're commissioned as a second lieutenant or second lieutenant equivalent in the case of the Navy, ensign. I will say from my background, it's tough to get in. You do have, that's what I didn't mention at the beginning either. You have a service obligation at each of the academies. That has been changing in the last 2 years, pretty considerably. Some of that's based on we had a lack of pilots in different services. We had a lack of engineers in the Army. So they started putting in, okay, if we give you a scholarship, if you go here, we want you to stay longer, which kind of just helps man our services and be able to, for us as a country, to prosecute and meet our national standards. Next slide. Coast Guard is that unique service. They now work for Homeland Security. They tend our shores. They guard our shores. They provide our rescue service that you typically see in the news. They do the maintenance on all of our buoys out, and that's one of their missions out along the coast. It's interesting. They have bases just like we do around the world. Many of our coastal states have more than 1 or 2 bases, but they're not typically bases like if you talk Army or you talk Air Force, large centerpiece like Fort Bragg, Jacksonville Naval Air Station. They're smaller, but because they are along the coast. And typically at a Coast Guard base, unless it's like Elizabeth City is one of the large ones, it's in North Carolina. That's also the school for the rescue swimmers, as well as several other training events that go on there. That's one of the larger ones. Coast Guard Academy is the smallest of all. It has about 1,000 students. And their big focus again is Marine and the marine environment and the airplanes that they have. When you think larger airplanes like C-130, that's your rescue. And you're going to, again, just like the Navy, you're going to be graduated with the rank of ensign in the Coast Guard. And again, you'll be working for Homeland Security. Same pay, just a different branch. Next slide. Merchant Marine Academy. It's funny, during Desert Storm, I was on Diego Garcia flying B-52s, and we just kept noticing these old big boats showing up, and they were offloading our bombs, which were very old and crusty looking. And the men unloading them were very old and crusty looking. And we didn't know what they were exactly. Well, one day we were playing sports and saw this gentleman in a different uniform. Turns out he was one of the officers on the Merchant Marine. So he educated us a little bit. I carried that forward into my education career to say, hey, we have a Merchant Marine Academy. But I found that you had to often educate folks on what that does. So it's a Federal Service Academy. It's not part of the military in terms of DoD. It can lead to military service. You still have a pretty rigorous academic background. You end up with a lot of credit hours, more than what's required for a typical bachelor degree, but you're part of a Federal Service Academy. You're going to be studying a lot of math sciences, marine engineering, knowing diesel boats, knowing how to work diesel engines, the naval sciences that go with that, because as the officer, you're physically commanding the ship, but you also have a mission of, in case of the ones on Desert Storm, they were delivering weapons from Guam. So when you think about what they do, there's a lot of information in there, or a lot of jobs that they do. Their acceptance rates is a little higher, 16%, and their requirements for application have changed the last couple of years also. All right, next slide. Timelines. So this is kind of recommended slash also have some references for it, and as current as we can get it in spring of 2025. So when families start talking, I have a good example. I go to a physical therapist and very laid back. And just last week when I saw her, she goes, by the way, I told you we'd never need to talk to you. And her husband's a veteran. He said, our daughter wants to go to the Air Force Academy. So we have a whole twist of, hey, can you help us out there? So 10th grade is perfect. She is a 10th grader. Start focusing on what it is they want to do. And you as a parent want to ask, why? What is it that's caused you to do that? What are you looking at in terms of going to an academy? And then start doing some of the research with them in terms of what the academies are about. And as then on their side, they need to start, folks, their academics need to be tops. Look at their extracurricular activities. What are they doing in terms of leadership roles? Start taking the PSAT for sure. Most schools offer that the sophomore year. And then once you get into the 11th grade year, you started getting your package together. Now it's taking the ACT. You still have an SAT for pre-qualifying for scholarship, but you're going to start working your 11th grade year when the application's open. You're going to start working that application early. You're going to let your counselors know, hey, I'm looking at applying to the academy. Because you may find a counselor that's not familiar with it, but there's someone else in the school that is familiar with applying for it. You're also in your 10th grade year, I make this recommendation all the time, especially for our military connected kids. Number one is that nomination. And I'll talk more about it in a minute, but start in your 10th grade year by introducing yourself to whoever your congressional staff is for a nomination. Just to let them know, I'm considering an academy. Let them know your name and your face. The more you can do that, then when it comes time for the actual ask, they go, oh, I know who that is. By June, you're going to need, of your junior year, you're going to need to start looking, make sure you got your application completed. You're ready for a DOB-MERB physical. I mentioned that already with ROTC. I said extensive physical. You'll take the candidate fitness test. That is a unique test. It's more than just push-ups, sit-ups, and a mile and a half run. You've got a basketball throw, a shuttle run, pull-ups, as well as the others, and it's all timed. And you actually have to have a certified person to give you that test. Typically, that's a coach at school, maybe your ROTC instructor. We put on the slide, potentially attend a summer leadership program. I always recommend kids, if you're serious about an academy, look at their summer programs and apply. Let them know you're really serious about coming there. You have a chance. Each academy has a different leadership program focus. There's a little bit of exposure to academics, all the things that go in. I had a cadet that went to, well, he's now a coming up on major on it, active duty, which makes me feel old. But when he was selected for the summer program because he wanted to do something in helicopters, and he did all 3 of his summers there. He worked in the helicopter programs, and amazingly, he's flying helicopters. And then once you start the 12th grade, hopefully you have everything completed. You've got it submitted. You're standing by for notifications. You're standing by for that interview with your nomination person. And you then are just like in a holding pattern, getting everything in. Now, I will say, you know, keep your doors open. You've got other applications you can be looking at, other scholarships, other schools, ROTC. You always have a backup plan. Next slide. All right, get into some tips. And again, I can tell you a lot of things about, hey, do this, do this. Stacy's in our chat box today. They may have more current. You may read things in social media, but you've got to wicker through all that and say what works for you, what works for your child. Check the websites and timelines early. Every congressional leader has a different approach to what they do. I can tell you that the nomination process in and of itself can be daunting. I won't say who, but one person in North Carolina had such an extensive nomination package that I had more kids quit at that point and not go to an academy than completed it. It was pretty extensive and a lot of essays just for a nomination package. But each state senator, just because they turn over, and if they turn over, if you're, say, in your sophomore year and that person's not reelected, continue to introduce yourself to that staff, because sometimes the office staff stays on and they'll be those ones to go, hey, we've been hearing from this person for a couple years. If you've moved a couple of times in your high school career, it's going to be more important to introduce early. There's several forums that you can join online. Again, it's a social media, it's forums. Always double check who your source is. If you're going to work with me as a military student consultant, I'm going to give you a reference as well as a resource. And if it can be a person like Stacy who's actively at one of the branches, I'm going to make sure you're in contact and do the introduction if need be. So when you are looking at your home of record versus current duty station, you can apply for a nomination based on where you're currently living. Those are the ones, because you move a lot, that can be tough because you're new and you've got to introduce yourself. So I always tell kids, write about the fact that you're a brat and that you've been able to, that you've moved and how that's been a positive for the most part, in terms of the global things that you've learned in your world because you've moved some. You have several levels of nominations. We mentioned here the presidential nominations reserved for our military. There's actually some also for our enlisted force. When you're on active duty, they have some nomination possibilities also. But once you get the nomination, the academies are going to look at it, and the academies can move those up. I had a young lady who got a North Carolina congressional, but then she was internally selected at West Point and was selected for vice president nomination. Next slide. I talked a little bit already about summer leadership. That is something that I encourage everyone that's considering an academy to go to. West Point has their summer leader experience. It's a week long. You get immersed, and all of them, you're immersed in academics, the military, the social side, I kind of laugh at the social side because I'm not sure our freshmen say they have any social life at the academies, just because everything is so rigorous. It gives you a chance to, though, meet other candidates, as well as start talking to some of the instructors and cadets that are there and kind of getting an idea of what you're looking at as you come in as a freshman. You then also get exposure to the academic side, what interests that you have, what you might be able to do on the academic side in terms of your major. I will show you the application opened for West Point on the 15th of February, and it's due to close on the 15th of April. The Air Force has a summer seminar, used to be summer scientific seminar, same kind of focus on academy life and academics. It's a 4-day. That application has already opened and closed. Again, everything's a little different. And you'll see a link to it in the chat box. The Navy has also their summer seminar. It's intended to be an introduction to the Naval Academy life, what you would experience as a first class cadet in terms of academics, athletics, leadership training. And then the Coast Guard Academy. Most familiar with this. I've had several kids attend it. It's an introduction to the mission of the Coast Guard and Coast Guard Academy life. It's a week-long program. It's called AIM, and it closes 1 April. Typically opens in February. And I will say this about all the summer programs, it gives you that opportunity it's like basically works as a preliminary application to the academy. I used to say, hey, based on what the academies say, it's a pretty high percentage of getting accepted. And before I retired from teaching high school, I was 0 for 5 for kids who went to summer programs and then did not get into the academies. So I don't say that anymore. But it does not only give you an indication of what you're going to be exposed to, but it gives the academy that you're applying to an exposure to you. And I know at the Air Force Academy, they go back and say, what did they do? And they kind of look at that 1 week. And you'll see lots of links in the chat box for each of them. I can't emphasize enough the changing nature, and mostly it ought to make sense, changing nature of our missions in the world and in terms of our technologies and what they do, hence Space Force. How it's incumbent upon you to be, well, what's the current thing out there? And then finding resources like we have Stacy here, or myself, or any other liaison officers in the area. Your school liaisons typically maintain a very aggressive list of your academy liaison officers in the local area. And that's going to be somebody who's typically, I should say, somebody who's graduated from an academy, or maybe was on the staff there and then did the training to become an ALO. Next slide. Some good to knows, and these are from around kind of around the world, from parents, from cadets who have attended it, from instructors who have been there. Like I said, serves as a preliminary application for the academy. You get a preview, they get a preview. You kind of know if you meet some of the basic standards to get in by admission to it. I always recommend kids apply, even if you're only looking at the Air Force Academy, apply to the summer programs at all of them. They do maintain wait lists, and I've actually had a cadet get waitlisted and selected to the Air Force Academy after being waitlisted. And again, like it says there, it's great. It's great, not required for admission, but it's a great experience, and it kind of gives you a heads up of what it's going to be like in terms of that taste of academy life. But we always have to say, does not guarantee admission. Hence my kids and the academies that have gone to them. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to give you some tips that we've received from across kind of a broad brush of research, families that have gone, cadets that have gone, those we're in contact with. We actually run two programs for students at West Point and one at Air Force Academy, and we're soon signing up one to do at the Naval Academy. So there's a lot of information that comes in from different sources. Like I said, if you contact me individually, I'm going to give you the resource so that you're not just listening to me, who you're probably looking at my beard going, that guy used to be in the military. I will tell you there's a bunch of us retired guys who decide, in my case, 41 years of shaving, I was done and now I enjoy my beard. Some tips we've gotten from families. Contacting your local service academy liaison. Like I said, if you're not sure who that is, ask in the counseling center at your school, ask on base your school liaison officers. There used to be a list that was published through Military One Source. I was not able to find that anymore, so I don't know if that one's there. But if you want to reach out, I will more than likely find something to put you in contact with somebody for each of the academies. Apply as soon as the portal opens. You kind of have a heads up of what the application is going to be, and you can be ahead of the game. We talk about how long you're there. That's changed a little bit also. You basically, it used to be you had 2 years to make up your mind where you're staying. There's a lot of things that go into that now. You may find yourself paying back with some enlisted time. That's because of how much money is involved in bringing you in as a student. After the sophomore year, there's money that is owed. It may even be now at a couple of the academies after the freshman year because there's a lot of money invested in you as a future officer. And like I said, even when I was still teaching in the 90s, we were talking career pathways 10 years out in terms of pilots and the Air Force. Next slide. All right, so pathways to the academies. There's a lot of different pathways, one of which is somewhat known because most folks know each of the academies have a prep school. What they may not know is there's other civilian schools that are considered prep schools, whether it's contractually or through tradition, but they are known. If you go there, it is considered a prep school. I actually had a liaison officer brief one day. His pathway was to one of those prep schools, then to the actual prep school at the Naval Academy, then to the Naval Academy. So when he graduated, his call sign was Gramps because he was as old as you can be to graduate from the academy because of that alternate pathway. But that was his desire. That's what he wanted to do. So what you'll do is after you apply, you'll be offered a spot. If you know, like at the Air Force Academy, they call it on the hill because it was over the hill from the main campus. What they're telling you is we'd love to have you, but we need to improve some areas. It might be your grades, it might be your physical aspects, but they're simply saying we want to invest in you, but we need to do it a little bit differently. If you're at a prep school, you're paid a certain pay based on being active duty of sorts, and then you have certain other responsibilities and rights while you're in the formal prep school. Once you get to a certain point, they will then walk you through an application for the academy once you get to the spring. And then you're competing to go over the hill. And I don't honestly have those rates. They change annually and it's just difficult to keep up with. There are spots on there for different types of students. This gentleman that I was talking about was prior enlisted, coming out of active duty. And by the time everything kind of worked in, he still graduated. He just was older than most. The academies all have athletic programs, very good athletic programs, so they do recruit athletes. Next slide. All right, so we had some slide. I don't know why this is blank. I thought this one was changed. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, here they go. Ha! It changed the format on me. All right, so there we go. Yes, lessons learned during high school. These are from families as we've gone through the years. Practice PSAT, SAT, ACT. There's so many programs out there for free, actually, to help you practice and improve those. Extracurricular activities, social community service, outside sports. You know, we now have so many AAU and off-school sports that you can be involved in. Again, the emphasis on leadership. Demonstrate how you've been involved in something and then taken on a leadership role within it. And then volunteering out in your community. That whole person concept. Next slide. Said this earlier, research, know what you're looking at. If your daughter or son comes to you and say, hey, I want to go to the Naval Academy, look back at them and say, what do you know about the Navy that says you want to do? Make sure they're reaching out for the right reasons in terms of when they look at the schools. Get the information from the school. Make sure your student has the most current information. You have access to a lot of people in and around you. Sometimes you know, but a lot of folks don't have time to go out and find it. Again, you contact me, I'm going to give that to you. Other folks in the field are going to do the same thing. Be diligent. Let your student know, make sure they're, what are we looking at? Especially when we talk nominations. When your student comes to you, show interest. You take time as a parent to learn, what is it about the academy? I may not know. And then as always, have a plan B. Plan B may be ROTC. Always talk about the interview. We put here, practice, practice, practice. Can't say enough about, well, how do you practice? Well, if you go to any event whether, let's say you're in HOSA or you're in a leadership activity where interviewing is offered as a skill set, do it. Have a chance to practice doing an interview. And the last thing, their dress and appearance. Can't say that enough. You can't just walk in off the street. You've got to show professionally that you as a student understand what you're looking at in terms of the academies, where they're considered in terms of colleges, and how important that interview will be. Next slide. DobMerb. Start it as soon as you get the paperwork. Be very careful. Make sure you write. And the story that I share is my all-state nephew was going to the Air Force Academy, recruited. His mama, a nurse, wrote, he had asthma one night. There's no such thing as asthma one night. As soon as asthma was on that list, he became ineligible. Even with the explanation, everything retracted, did not. And so his Air Force Academy career ended right there. She felt bad later and realized, but nobody, is like, it was too late. It was undone. And then follow all the guidelines. This is where, as a parent, you can help. Let your child do the work, but you now help make sure that they're following the guidelines, that they're answering the question that's there. You can be that backup, and then that shows them, hey, I've got mom and dad support. Next slide. I left the character slide on here. Honor and integrity, that is the bedrock of every academy. Can't say enough about that. And then I added clean up social media. It's often, this goes across, whether you're ROTC, just general scholarships, it's often not you, it's a friend of a friend who puts something that you're drug into, especially now with the at everyone or at followers. And you find out, when did I become a follower of that person? And they're posting something and you're like, that is not me. but your name's already on there. So parents, you can help with that also. And then always, always, always examples of yourself. If you've been the leader of something, not only talk about, hey, I was the president or I was the commander, but this is what we did while I was the commander. Next slide. And like I said, parent-child, let the student do the application. You be their backup. Make sure you double check, not that you're looking over their shoulder, but if the question's asking how, they actually answer a how question. The best example I can say is there's typically a question, whether it's a nomination or ROTC or whatever, that says, what is your leadership style? And we will get, I can't count how many scholarship review boards, the definition of leadership in 300 or 500 words. And then the next question is, well, give us an example of how you use your leadership style. And we get 300 more words of the definition of leadership. You can be that backup and say, are you asking a question? There's actually some programs that can help with that. Your kids are going to have roller coasters. If they're dead set on going to the academy, there's a lot of things they're going to find out. Wow, they're going to take that candidate physical test to go, I didn't do so well in a basketball throw. I'm not sure who really does. Who thinks about throwing a basketball like a baseball? But that's what the test does. And then be there to be the encouraging and support piece. Last thoughts from me, really, and then we do Q&A as we have time for. If your child says they're looking at the military, ROTC, academies, take time to figure out what's best for them. Your child. What environment are they going to do well? If you know that your child has always been that on the outside edge, wanting to push the limits, being that, the academies might not be the best place for them because you're in a box and you stay in a box. And you'll see several things in here. I've updated a couple of the links that are in there. The demystifying the nomination process is a really good piece. Some of the folks in here that are like Stacy, you may have some other social media type things folks can read. There's a lot out there. Just double check, who's doing the comments. Make sure it's, not somebody that's doesn't have a background. And I saw somebody, Clint said, I've heard Air Force stresses being high school varsity. Nobody can really say that. Clint, in terms of ROTC versus athletics, I had just as many kids when I was there who had been on junior ROTC Raider teams, drill teams, but not as many athletic teams. They certainly got them selected as much as some of the athletes did. And I've had athletes of football, basketball, track, gymnastics, swimming. I think that was most of, I had one baseball player too. They were also in ROTC. So they find a way. And I don't know that anybody would say an academy, you can look at the stats and break it out, but nobody's actually going to say that. Clint, I'd say reach out to me. Let's kind of start talking with the student now, what year in school they are, and then we can work up a plan. And I can put you in contact with whichever ALO is near you.
And we have another question, Mark. What about martial arts like judo? And I'm not sure what BJJ stands for, but type of martial art, I assume.
Yes, all of them have. Oh, I see there's messages I'm missing. I'm like, hey, everything quit. The all the academies have those. In fact, all the academies have intramural sports that you don't get a vote. You're going to participate in at least one day a week. But in terms of NCAA level, they do have those sports, and they do look at that as a physical fitness assessment. My favorite cadet, who now is a millionaire and author and pilot for FedEx, came out of Crenshaw Heights in LA, which is you'd say, how does someone come out of there to an academy? Because it's 7,000 students and 20 fights a week back when he was coming in. He chose to go into fencing. And I never forget, I said, why are you doing fencing? He goes, I get 2 weeks off in the fall to go to Notre Dame to a big fencing competition. And 2 weeks in the spring, we go to Spain. I'm like, you're a smart guy. And there was not a lot of kids applying to be a fencer.
Okay, she just clarified, so to rephrase, during martial arts as the applicant versus a team sport.
Yeah,
So-
definitely write that up, because that is, I actually had a kid, my cadet who was elevated to a vice presidential nomination. She was a national champ individually in martial arts in two different, in fact, she defeated a West Point cadet her sophomore year of high school. So yes, those are definitely something that they consider. Now, this child also was one of my swimmers, and got an offer she couldn't say no to start a swim program and a full ride at a university. So she did not go to West Point. Her brother did, however, and he was also into Tai Chi and swam for me.
Very good. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Mark. I know everyone enjoys me in appreciation of your knowledge regarding all the academies, the ROTC, but I think also for all the practical wisdom that you shared with us today, you know, about all the kind of background stuff that you've heard from families. And of course, we do want to thank you for how you support all of our military connected students and families in your role as an MSEC student, a military student consultant. And we put the link in the chat box. If you have other questions for Mark that may come up, his email is in the chat box, as well as just the generic email for our military student consultants. And I'm sure that it would reach Mark if it was related to something Academy or JRTC wise. Oh, and Mark actually put his phone number in there. So
That's my Google phone. That's my Google phone that's direct on my desk.
Okay,
If you
awesome.
call on the MSEC Zoom line, my extension's 1150.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's very nice. But we all want to thank you for sitting through it. We went just a little bit over today, but it was a lot of information. And we invite and encourage you that we talked about taking that survey for today's webinar. We mentioned it in the beginning. You can do that by clicking on the survey link that's in the chat box. But you can also use your phone and use the QR code on the screen. It only takes a few minutes, and we really do appreciate your feedback. Once you connect to the survey, you'll need to type in the 4-digit webinar number specific for this webinar, which is 3925, and be sure to hit submit at the end of the survey. Again, we really do appreciate your time. We use this tool to make ongoing improvements to our webinar series. Sometimes we'll add new topics of interest. And of course, we do provide feedback to our funders. So we have some fantastic resources I want to share with you. We invite you to check out SchoolQuest. It is an online interactive tool that's designed specifically to help our highly mobile military families and students. However, it's not limited to them. If you get in there and you find it, you think it may be beneficial to someone else, please share it. It's full of resources and tips to help students achieve academic success, and it's free. So again, look at it and please feel free to share. The Military Child Wellbeing Toolkit was developed by MSEC for parents, school professionals, mental health and behavioral professionals, and community leaders. So that this tool, this free tool, is full of, again, resources for all aspects of the military connected child well-being. And we'd love for you to explore it on our website and share it with others as well. If you missed one of our recordings or our previous webinar, or especially if you want to share this session with someone, it can be found on our website. Link is in the chat box under families. And also we have a YouTube channel. So those are the two links you can find our recorded websites on. Again, we talked about Mark being our military student consultant. If you have any questions or concerns or education related issues for your military connected children, these two are the ones that offer that one-on-one help for all of your questions. So that link is there. for the military student consultants in the chat box. And then there's a QR code on the screen as well. We're also very excited to announce that our webinars are created specifically for our Spanish-speaking military communities. So we invite you to join Mariela and Yasmina on the last Thursday of each month for these special webinar presentations funded by HEB. As with the rest of our webinars, they begin at noon Eastern Time. Their next one is Thursday, March 27th, again, 12 Eastern Time. The English version is Essentials to Home Education, and the Spanish version is in the chat box. If you're interested in obtaining a certificate of completion, please complete that online survey that we offered you earlier, and then reach out to research@militarychild.org, and that link is in the chat box. We don't want you to miss the fantastic opportunity for our military student-to-student teams and all other peer-to-peer student transition teams from around the world to network and collaborate with each other at our MSIC 2025 Global Training Summit. So if you have a student-to-student or a peer student transition team, you may be very interested in that, and the link is in the chat box. And AMSEC is honored to be paired and partnered with Columbia Southern University to provide the Military Child Education Coalition Heroic Hearts Scholarship to a member of the military caregiving population. Caregiving youth and the children are young adults up to 18 who are actively involved and are currently impacted by the caring needs of a wounded, ill, or injured service member. MSEC supports all military-connected children, of course, by educating, advocating, collaborating to resolve the educational challenges, this being one of them, that are associated with our military lifestyle. And that link is in the chat box. One more exciting thing, MSEC's Call for the Arts program invites our military-connected children from all over the world, representing every branch of service, to share their interpretations through art of what it means to be a military-connected child. This is open to any military child. The deadline to submit is April 30th. And for more information, there's a QR code on the screen and a link in the chat box. And art can be very varied. So if you have a child that's into art, I'm sure they can decide what it is for them. We also are in partnership with Lockheed Martin Space, and we shine a light on STEM careers through a series of 5 one-hour virtual sessions discussing agriculture, health sciences, business administration, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and engineering. The next STEM career exploration session is March 31st, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be focusing on engineering. And then the next 2 you can see on your screen. April's business administration, May 12th is health sciences. And if you go into that link, will take you to the recordings of the previous ones. So we have 2 webinars upcoming. Tomorrow, Wednesday, March 12th, we have a webinar on bullying. So it talks about both sides of the bullying situation. And on Tuesday, March 18th, we have a webinar on financial skills for students with exceptional needs. Please remember that all webinars start at 12 noon Eastern Time, and the links for those registrations are in the chat box. And we'd like to give a special thanks again to the Navy Child and Youth Programs for making today's webinar possible. We want to thank Mark again for his time and sharing all of his knowledge. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.